Stefan Kowalski sent 14 Polish resistance fighters to kill Bumpy Johnson. Only 3 walked out, and the message they delivered made the most feared Polish commander in New York abandon his empire and flee to Chicago forever. April 19, 1948. Bumpy Johnson was outnumbered 14-1. Stefan Kowalski had sent his deadliest crew, Janek the Shadow, Piotr the Wolf, Marek the Silent, Anna the Ghost, 10 more Warsaw Ghetto Uprising survivors, whose names were whispered in fear from Krakow to Brooklyn. They cornered Bumpy in the Cotton Club basement. No witnesses, no way out. Bumpy was 43 years old, established king of Harlem, but facing battle-hardened resistance veterans. Kowalski was the most connected Polish commander in New York. Everyone expected the same ending. Bumpy Johnson dead in a basement. But what Kowalski didn't know, Bumpy Johnson understood survival better than most Poles. 3 hours later, only 3 of those 14 fighters walked out alive, and they delivered a message that made Stefan Kowalski abandon his territory and disappear forever. This is the story of the night Bumpy Johnson honored the memory of the Warsaw Ghetto. To understand what happened that night, you need to understand Stefan Kowalski. He was a commander in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, one of the few survivors who escaped when the Nazis burned the ghetto to the ground in 1943. He arrived in New York in 1945 with dozens of other resistance fighters. By 1948, Kowalski controlled the Lower East Side with military discipline. His fighters weren't typical gangsters. They were survivors who'd fought the SS with homemade weapons and burning buildings. Men and women who understood sacrifice, resistance, and absolute loyalty to their people. But there was a problem. Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy had been expanding his territory southward since 1947, establishing numbers operations, protecting Jewish businesses, offering security services in areas Kowalski considered sacred Polish territory. To Kowalski, this wasn't business competition. This was occupation. A black man providing protection to Jews was insulting to everything Polish resistance had died for. October 1947, Kowalski sent emissaries to Bumpy. The message was clear: stay north of Houston Street or face the consequences of crossing Polish resistance fighters. Bumpy sent back a response that made Kowalski's blood boil. Tell Stefan that freedom fighters don't threaten other freedom fighters. November 1947. Kowalski tried intimidation. He convinced Polish dock workers to refuse shipments to businesses under Bumpy's protection. He pressured Polish shop owners to ban Bumpy's people from their establishments. He spread rumors that Bumpy was working with communist agents. Bumpy responded by opening a memorial center for Holocaust survivors, free counseling, job training, protection from anti-Semitic attacks in the heart of Polish territory. December 1947. Kowalski escalated. He sent 8 fighters to destroy the memorial center. They came back unconscious, tied up, and left at a synagogue with a note: "Freedom fighters protect the oppressed. They don't terrorize them." By April 1948, Kowalski was getting pressure from other Polish resistance leaders. His inability to control the Harlem problem was making Polish survivors look weak. Resistance fighters didn't tolerate weakness. So Kowalski made a decision that would end his leadership. He assembled 14 of his most battle-tested veterans, men and women who'd survived the ghetto uprising, who'd fought SS troops with bottles and stones, who'd killed Nazis, and would kill for Polish honor. The plan was simple: corner Bumpy Johnson, execute him on the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, send a message that Polish territory was not to be violated. April 18, 1948. The 14 fighters gathered at Kowalski's safe house on the Lower East Side. These weren't street criminals. Janek had killed 6 SS officers with a knife. Piotr had led raids against Nazi supply convoys. Anna had survived Treblinka and escaped to join the resistance. They were heroes, not gangsters. Kowalski briefed them personally. Bumpy Johnson has dishonored Polish sacrifice. He must be eliminated quickly and permanently. What are his crimes against Poland? Asked Marek the Silent. Occupation of Polish territory. interference with Polish operations, disrespect for resistance authority. The fighters accepted their mission. They'd been following Kowalski's orders since arriving in America. They trusted his judgment completely. April 19th, 1948, 11:30 p.m. 14 Polish fighters moved through lower Manhattan like ghosts. They disabled security, cut phone lines, positioned themselves with resistance precision around the Cotton Club. Janek picked the lock using skills he'd learned, breaking into Nazi headquarters. The 14 fighters descended the stairs in perfect silence. Professional resistance veterans executing a military operation. They found Bumpy sitting alone, reading a book, drinking coffee. He looked up as they formed a semicircle around him, 14 weapons pointed at his head. Stefan Kowalski sends his regards, Janek announced, his Polish accent thick with authority. Bumpy closed his book slowly. He looked around the semicircle of fighters, studying their faces carefully. Then he spoke in perfect Polish. 14 żołnierzy, żeby zabić jednego człowieka, Bumpy said. 14 soldiers to kill one man. The fighters froze. Bumpy Johnson speaking Polish was impossible. But what he said next changed everything. Kizi tego Chisholby, Mordechaj Anielewicz, Bumpy continued. Is this what Mordechaj Anielewicz would have wanted? Janek lowered his weapon slightly. How do you know about Anielewicz? Znam historian, powstania, uskiechi warsawskim, Bumpy replied. I know the history of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, because I understand fighting against impossible odds. Piotr stepped forward. You dare speak our hero's name? I speak about resistance, because I am a resistance fighter, Bumpy said, standing slowly. You fought the Nazis to save your people. I fight oppression to protect mine. We're fighting the same war. Anna was confused. But you're occupying Polish territory. I'm protecting Holocaust survivors from the same hatred that destroyed Warsaw, Bumpy corrected. The same people who burned the ghetto are the ones lynching Black Americans. Bumpy reached into his jacket. 14 weapons aimed at him, but he moved slowly, carefully. He pulled out a small object and placed it on the table. It was a Polish resistance armband, faded and torn, with the anchor symbol of the Warsaw Uprising. A friend gave me this in Alcatraz, Bumpy said quietly. Polish resistance fighter named Kazimierz Noek survived the ghetto uprising, escaped to America, spent his last years in prison for fighting anti-Semitism in New York. Janek stared at the armband. Kazimierz Noek. You knew him? He was my cell commander during the uprising. Taught me everything about fighting for survival. He taught me something too, Bumpy said. He taught me that resistance fighters protect all oppressed people, not just their own. The basement went completely silent. 14 Polish veterans suddenly questioning everything they thought they knew. What are you saying? Piotr asked. I'm saying the Nazis who destroyed Warsaw are the same people who enslaved Black Americans. We should be allies, not enemies. Marek spoke for the first time in months. But Kowalski is our commander. Kowalski has forgotten what you're really fighting for, Bumpy replied. You're not fighting for Polish territory in New York. You're fighting against fascism wherever it exists. Anna looked around at her comrades, professional fighters, but also survivors raised on stories of resistance and sacrifice. What proof do you have? Anna asked. Bumpy gestured to the resistance armband. Look at what's sewn beneath the anchor. Janek examined the armband carefully. Sewn in small letters were the words, Za wolność naszą I waszą, our freedom and yours. Kazimierz believed that Polish freedom meant freedom for everyone. Bumpy continued. Not just freedom for Poland, but freedom from oppression everywhere. For the next 2 hours, 14 Polish fighters listened as Bumpy explained how Nazi ideology had oppressed both their peoples. How the same system that murdered Jews was lynching Black Americans. How fighting each other only helped their common enemy. He's right, Piotr said quietly. We're betraying what we fought for in Warsaw. Janek studied the resistance armband. What do you propose we do? Take this armband back to Kowalski. Tell him it came from Kazimierz Nokok's student. Tell him that Polish resistance fighters protect all victims of fascism. One by one, the 14 fighters filed back up the basement stairs, but not all of them. 11 men and women left the Cotton Club that night. 3 stayed behind. Why? Bumpy asked. Because you reminded us what we survived the ghetto for, Janek replied. The next morning, Janek the Shadow walked into Kowalski's safe house and placed the Polish resistance armband on his table. Where is Bumpy Johnson? Kowalski demanded. Alive. What do you mean, alive? I sent 14 fighters. Janek's voice carried the authority of Warsaw's burning streets. You sent 14 resistance veterans to kill a man who protects Holocaust survivors, the same way we protected Jews in the ghetto. Kowalski stood up, his face red with rage. How dare you question my orders? How dare you betray the resistance? Janek replied. Bumpy Johnson understands what we fought for better than you do. The room went dead silent. Kowalski's other fighters watched as Janek delivered the message that would end their commander's authority. Kazimierz Nowak died fighting for all oppressed peoples. Bumpy Johnson carries on that fight. You've forgotten what Polish resistance means. And if I refuse to accept this, Janek looked around the room at Kowalski's remaining fighters, men and women who'd heard about Kazimierz Nowak, who understood what true resistance meant. Then you'll discover that some Polish fighters remember what we really survived for. 3 days later, Stefan Kowalski took a train to Chicago. He never returned to New York. The 3 fighters who stayed behind became trusted allies in Bumpy's organization. They helped establish Holocaust memorial services, anti-fascist protection networks, and survivor support programs. And that Polish resistance armband, old Bumpy kept it in his office for the rest of his life. A reminder that resistance recognizes resistance, and freedom fighters protect all oppressed peoples. April 19th, 1948. 14 fighters walked into a basement to commit execution. 11 walked out, having remembered what they survived for. And the 3 who stayed helped honor the memory of those who died. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemy. It's showing them they're betraying everything they once fought for. If this story of resistance honoring resistance moved you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you believe freedom fighters protect all oppressed peoples, and comment below. What would you have done in that basement?